Hi, everybody. This is Nahla. I'm one of the co-founders of Forsa School, along with Rania Jashi from Naqd Critic and Sharjah Arts Foundation. And this was an initiative established to really get to grips and arm all of us as creative practitioners with the skills, the musings, the understandings of what we need to navigate these careers, specifically in the UAE. The tutors that we have called on are all based here and have had very enriching careers. And Kevin is one of those people who, I mean, personally for me, has been such a dear mentor and has really just helped me understand my own personal practice that is so multifaceted. But I have seen him do wonders when it comes to both artists, educational projects, and the corporate world as well. So Kevin, by trade, is an independent arts writer and an educator who is interested in the self-representational strategies of art practitioners in the UAE. He founded Juniper Mind as a way of bridging all these gaps, particularly between artists, brands, and the other way around, allowing them to think more critically. So Kevin, I'm going to leave it to you to get on with the presentation. I just want to say in terms of housekeeping, we will be speaking for about 40 minutes. We will take your questions at the very end, so please use the Q&A section of the Zoom call. But yes, without further ado, Kevin, please, this is very exciting.
Okay, well, thank you, Nahal, and thank you. That's very kind, actually, to say. Those are, it's very touching. So, and we debated, because we have such a strong past, we debated whether we would actually even have to sort of rely on a PowerPoint, but we decided to go with the flow and see how the PowerPoint goes. And in any case, I think the title of the talk needs some unpacking, so we'll go through the PowerPoint, at least to a certain degree, to unpack exactly why I chose this title, which is the fruit of conversations with Nahla, with Rania as well, which have been very engaging and very productive. So practicing beyond the art world, there's an article that came out from a former editor of mine when I used to write for Art Agenda before he joined Art Review, a guy called Ben Eastham, who's very sharp, and he wrote an article that you can read online for free. It's only a couple of weeks old, in Art Review, called "What is the Art World?" And he's echoing. It's an opinion piece, so it's quite critical. But he's echoing questions that have been around with us, you know, for the since the 70s. You know, since there's a kind of, I'd say, Lucy Depart and a whole kind of conceptual art sort of. Shift, let's say. And so his question, this is his lead paragraph. And for those of you who have worked with me, you know how much I care about argumentation and stasis and the beginnings of arguments within writings. But I mean, I'm not going to read this whole thing for you, but he starts off by asking this question and then ends his sentence with the fact that really nobody knows how many people are in the art world. And this is just one of a cascade of things he does to trouble what our definition of the art world is. And he doesn't move too far away from that idea of that really well, nobody knows. And so what I want to talk about is this idea of being in the art world for a really long time. I still teach at Tashkil, and I teach a course that is called Critical Dialogues, and it's devoted to this idea of critical thinking. Like, so we spend 6 weeks reading critically, and that means reading, you know, some theory, but a lot of critical texts, understanding what insights are, understanding how arguments are built. And then we spend 6 weeks with this writing being done sort of by the students themselves. But once someone recently, like today, said this to me about this program that I've been doing for 5 years in Tashkil, and this was not meant with any sort of disrespect at all. But she said to me, so what you do is give us an introduction to the art world, right? And I thought about that for some time, and I thought, is that it? Is that all I'm doing? Is that this art world is so sort of vague and domineering that all I can ever hope to do is kind of, peel off a little bit of it to introduce and reveal. And I felt, well, no, actually, that's not what I do. I actually help you find a voice within the art world. And so what does that mean? In fact, we don't even look at art, really. I mean, the structure of the thing never changes, but the content of it changes every year, this course, Critical Dialogues. And we rarely, I mean, we do much more reading than we do looking at art. And so it's the first thing I have to get out of people's heads, is that we're not here to sort of look at works of art. The art is sort of a means for us to look at the writing about the art. So the art is an excuse for us to actually analyze writing. And we go through textual analysis and we try to pinpoint critical insights. What are sentences that you really need to sort of sit with, written by critics or curators, or all of the different apparatuses that are generating writing around art. We look at argumentation. How is argumentation built? What is an argumentative text? What's a descriptive text? And we also come to ask ourselves questions about strategies, our own strategies of when we write about our work, because ultimately this is what the deliverable for me is. So when I say it's about finding your voice in the art world, it really is about writing about your practice. And it means writing about your practice in a strategic way, like with all of these things over here in mind, right? And so what I do, and again, to respond to this question, is really help you mediate your practice. And mediating means that you have a text that is somehow this membrane between you and the rest of the world, be it the art world or other worlds. But the text somehow comes to be a negotiator for you. It puts forth the strategies that you want to have, or it manifests the strategies, let's say. It becomes a tool in this deployment of the things that you want to do. And so going into that text, you really have to think critically about what it is that you do. You have to read critically, as we've done. You have to look at other artists' practices, look at your peers' practices, look at people who are working on things that, with topics or with in media maybe that you're working with. That's the upstream stuff. But downstream, there's also a lot from this. So once the text actually flies, and once this membrane is whatever pulsating, you have a lot of other questions that come up. And these are questions that, at least with me, like come out of the brand world. So initially, I mean, my training is as a journalist initially, but I very quickly went into the branding world and the advertising world as a strategist. So I worked for a long time until 2019, almost exclusively in branding. But this idea of positioning, of strategy, of a voice, of distinction, USPs, you would say if you were in advertising, unique selling propositions. What are these things and how do they work with artists? And it seems to me, even if we call them other things, all of these things are really important in this idea of mediating a practice. When I say strategy, I mean to talk about a strategy of maybe even self-representation, like Syrian artist. What does that mean? Do I want to be called a Syrian artist? What baggage comes with being Syrian today? What would a Syrian gay artist, what would that mean? What would that do? How would that sort of alter perception? In what way? Does my work even go there? So this is a strategy of self-representation, of how do I put myself out into the world, the art world, through my text or even through studio visits, so it can be written or oral, I would say. So I'm kind of processing all this stuff as I go along. And then I realized, so again, being a kind of rational sort of Cartesian type of person, I realized that I need to put a methodology together. And lo and behold, a methodology emerged that kind of works in this way that's kind of at the triangulation of strategy, which is down at the bottom right, of critique, which is again part of my background as writing art criticism, and coaching to a degree, because I've worked with coaching and mentoring a lot, not only my work in the art world, but also in brand world and corporate settings, I've had to do a lot of mentoring. So for me, this kind of methodology, which I use with artists today, and again, those of you with whom I'll be doing mentoring will hear me talk about some of these other things. It's looking at all of these components of your practice. It's not just looking at a body of work and writing a text that will go on the wall or that will help the gallery buy it. Although show it. I'm hoping that some of that is a favorable outcome, but before you get to that, there's a lot of strategic thinking, I think, that goes into what that text does. So for me, these galvanize three sort of parts of my research. So these are examples. Sorry.
Yeah, having been on the receiving end of that, it was really this idea about linking my belief systems, my values, who I was, where I grew up, why, contextualizing all of that and understanding it, not necessarily, just applying to how I present myself as an artist, but it then just flows into how you present and understand yourself. So I appreciate that you put the coaching and cognitive part in there, because it is a lot like therapy. Yeah,
but you helped evolve this as well. I mean, because I think a lot of the methodology wasn't as sharp as this. But yeah, you helped sort of layer a lot of this stuff in there. And there are moments when, I mean, I struggle writing proposals. I struggle writing text and essays and things like that. I would love to have someone coach me through it and tell me to do things. And so that's also kind of the role that I play, helping people overcome certain obstacles in their path. And again, writing is a really important part of this, writing not necessarily therapeutically, but writing through things, writing through an idea, writing through, a blockage of some kind. So this kind of the use of writing and playing around with the writing, let's remove the I from this, write about yourself in the third person, listen to it, write as the artwork, let's say. So experimental sort of writing also to help you sort of see things in a different way. So shifting a little bit of the thinking, but ultimately, as Nahla says, get into this, your own sort of what I call drivers and your own sort of urge to be an artist. What is it? What is this practice? Where is it headed? What drives it, right? So these are all examples of this kind of brand world savvy, or the strategy from the brand world brought into the art world. But now I'm thinking this is kind of, this is working well, this is really good, but what if we went in the other direction? How challenging would that be? And sometimes it's really not challenging at all. And because I play this role of being sort of having a foot in both this sort of corporate environment and very deeply in the art world, I get approached a lot by brands that say, well, can you find us an artist who makes positive art? So this is really recent. This is just last month. So can you give us a short list of names of artists who will make positive art for our mobile phones? And we're doing a campaign about positivity. So I'm no. And then I also got this is a little older, but this was, so you can find us an artist to sculpt our logo, right? No, I really can't. I mean, I don't feel that this is valuable to anyone. And so the conversation is always well, what is in it for the artist? What does the artist get? And the answer always, without fail, is visibility. And then the question is, but what kind of visibility are you offering to an artist? This is a classic as well. This dates from a couple of years ago. So you can find us a painter to fill up our show home, right? This is kind of like a Damac thing. It wasn't Damac actually. It was some other brand, but it's the same thing. So my answer to this is no, also because no one is looking. I find the intentionality of these questions extremely reductive. I feel they either reduce the art to a purely decorative function, or they either reduce the artist to some sort of dancing monkey that's going to produce things, positivity. So it's a thorny question, and Nahla, I think, I will talk about this a little bit, because you don't want to not necessarily remove yourself from the commercial world, but you do want to find things that mediate correctly with your practice. So what is it that I am proposing? And this is something that I pitched for a long time and deeply unsuccessfully to companies, largely to retailers, because they seemed like the easiest port of entry. But what I'm trying to work on now, and this is the first time that I'm actually pitching it to artists, which I think is the actual right way to do it, is you take the idea to artists first and you try to find some artists to work with, and then you kind of go to brands, maybe even with projects. But I did it the other way around. And my thinking for this kind of new kind of artist residency went something like this. So I don't know if you remember this guy, Drew Bennett. He's no longer with Facebook, but he was an artist, and he would lead this kind of artist in residency program at Facebook in California. And then it sort of kind of sprouted out to all these other different places. And I think there was one in Dubai. But the artist in residency at Facebook and places like Google is largely, and this is a video, but I won't play it for you because it's hard to hear it. It was very badly recorded. But essentially what he's saying is that at Facebook, it was done as a kind of almost like a human resources thing, because the people at Facebook were like deeply geek, like nerdy people who didn't interact with art very much. And it was kind of cool for them to have an artist doing something in their space for a month or 2 months. And it was a sort of, it was kind of an internal relations type of deal. So obviously Facebook got a commissioned work, and that went into their collection. But largely in places like Facebook, Google, Adobe, that's pretty much what the artist is used for. It's kind of, it's instrumentalized to a certain degree, but not in a bad way, but instrumentalized in order to do something. So these are what the collaborations have been. Adobe also uses them, and Google uses artists to do a lot of product testing. Creation, like co-creation of products. Adobe, it's kind of obviously a no-brainer. And so my shift in all of this, away from Facebook and big tech, is what if you actually started thinking about collaborations where the artist didn't make anything? Like what if the artist just thought instead of making? And the idea is that the artist thinks of the artist's role is as a concept maker, as someone who is going to address pain points that the brand has always had from a different type of creativity. I mean, I've worked in, again, branding and creative solutions that come out of agencies are largely predictable. And I think this is getting only worse as we work more and more with armies of freelance people. And again, I say this with absolute respect. And I don't think it's down to the individual people. I think it's down to sort of the grind of the business and the kind of like myopic nature of clients that makes one kind of always find the same things, always finds the same solutions that are coming out of so-called creative shops. And I feel that there's a huge space for the artist not to replace them, but to engage on a much higher level, to engage on a concept level, to go and do a proper residency. And again, I frame it very knowingly in these terms, that, to go out and do a proper residency in a company. Because I think that there are stimuli and there are ways of seeing things that the brand people just do not see that an artist can. And an artist will come up with ideas that are actually fundamentally more conceptually challenged. I don't want to say more creative or less creative because I find that's unfair, but they're more conceptually challenging, and they may be able to address briefs in ways that have not yet been seen. So also, this is not new. I mean, I can't take credit for a lot of this gesture in and of itself, because if you look at a law firm like Miscon de Rea, which represent very famous UK law firm, they've had a poet in residence for a long time. So lawyers very skilled in language. This poet somehow made them, pushed them to stimulate their use of language in different ways. And she would always do things like screensavers on there, like unexpected screensavers and stuff. So these are all sort of examples. Unilever down at the bottom and on the left in 1999 did a program which is called Catalyst, which essentially gave employees of Unilever the right to sort of install art around. So in the 90s, I guess there was a kind of ease of buying, especially this was in London, so young British artists, and you could buy, they had a collection that was that was there, and they were actually giving the rights, sacrificing the rights to curate this stuff to employees. Employees would work on it, on the curation of this collection. Also things like actors who would come in to help people do things, kind of think more differently or behave differently, specifically in meetings or presentations. Like this is a little less specifically arts related. And then you have like the New York Sanitation Department, which is on the Muriel Ukele's image that I showed earlier, where she was an artist in residence with the sanitation department, because that was her practice. It was about dirt, and especially like feminist practices around cleaning. And so she went and proposed herself as an artist in residence at this New York Sanitation Department, and they bought it, they understood it, and they went with it. And I think she no longer lives in New York, but she was there for an extremely long time. And then obviously Marks and Spencer has a writer in residence, and as is Wimbledon. So the writer in residence seems a little easier to tell, but I feel that there is this kind of like need, not necessarily need, but this could actually work because there is a legacy of it. So in my thinking, I was like, okay, I'm going to go and talk to retailers about this idea. And I used to, and one of the agencies I worked for, Spinneys, was our client. And one of the like heads of marketing of Spinneys left and went to Carrefour. And she contacted me in her new job at Carrefour. I think she like really wanted to impress her new bosses. And she said to me, I would like to commission you to do a trend report on beacon technology. So I don't know if you know beacon technology at the time. I mean, this is even not, it's only a year ago. And beacon technology, I think, has become like the old sock in the dryer. But it's sort of, beacon technology would have like enabled you to find things in the store, or for things in the store to find you. It was a way of actually sort of interacting through sound waves. I'm not sure exactly of the tech, but she wanted me to kind of do a whole report on that and try to come up with solutions, because she really wanted a tech thing. And I was like, okay, well, let's kind of sit down and talk and try to tell me a little bit more about what's going on and why you are so, attached to beacon technology. And in fact, I found out that there's a lot wrong with her store, and it's really on an experiential level. So she was looking at like all the Carrefours, but only stuff that she could change without having to go like up to a Parisian sort of hierarchy. And so one of her like huge thorns in the retail side was the fishmonger on any time of day, at any day. There were people waiting all the time and all the stuff. And I was like, listen, I would love to bring an artist in and help you solve this problem with an artist. Because they were coming up with ideas like, let's show like a video of fish in the sea, like just swimming freely, or let's show people how to like scale a fish, and ideas that seemed very counterproductive to what they were doing in the name of entertainment, right? And I thought, this is really wrong. So this was my question, and how could we do that? And obviously there would be a methodology to this, because as I said, I'm a really kind of methodological thinker, and I would work with the artist to like use things from situationism, use this kind of idea of psychogeography as an understanding the space of the fishmongering area, right? Michel de Certeau as well, this whole idea of walking and spatial relations. So I think there's a lot that conceptually you can start layering into that. Does this mean that people from Carrefour see this background work? Maybe not. But my feeling is that they'll get something way more interesting than a floor sticker or, a promotional video for things, which will infuriate people who are waiting even further. So this idea of working with artists to come up with solutions that are workshopped a little bit with the brand as well, in order to kind of really and truly innovate. And I think also I chose this image from parkour because I think that's exactly, and again, the situationists would sort of approve of this. The whole idea of psychogeography is using sort of urban things that are no longer, or that you use them for something else. So something that's supposed to divide, you actually use to springboard off of and go somewhere else. So yeah, so my efforts now are centered on you to kind of pitch this idea to you as an artist and see if there's not more sort of luck to be had in taking it on the road in the opposite sense, like pitching it to you first and then getting your feedback on it and then fine tuning it even further.
I mean, Kevin, thank you so much for this. And please, for the rest of you, if you have any questions, now is your time. I have made a few notes as well that I would love to talk to you about. And I mean, the first was this idea of, well, what if Carrefour really want that mural, right? And you're trying to sit there and you're trying to negotiate otherwise, and they're not grasping that. And it's a gateway, right? And it's also an opportunity to kind of delve into these practices a little bit, or what is typically seen as a cliched meeting between an artist and the brand, and unpacking it further. So a mural, for example, can have many loaded expansions, like working with different communities, or who do you engage with this mural? What are your choices, let's say, and I don't know, color, topic, does it change? Does it? So I guess my question to you is, how can an artist be armed with enough negotiation to turn the heads of these brands around, when the assumption is, oh, artists paint wall?
Well, look, I mean, I think it's a long educational process. And the reason I failed a lot of times with this is that people just didn't understand what artists did. Like, for me to come in and say, think of the artist as a thinker, not a maker, it'd be like, what? Like, these are kind of people who generally do not have an experience with conceptual art or ideas of practice or wall text or anything that actually helps us kind of mediate thinking and making, or kind of bridge thinking and making. And I think that, so when I was showing this deck, like really early on, like a year ago now, like more like a year and a half, people would say to me, well, you need another slide before that artist in residency to explain what contemporary art is. And so I was faced with like the absurd proposition of explaining contemporary art in one slide. But I mean, I think that that's emblematic of this need to really educate, right? To educate a brand. I mean, this is why I find that the opportunism that kind of just like sieves through all of these questions that I like somehow ridiculed here. I feel that these are, Patrick's going to tell me what beacon technology is. I'm certain of it. But this kind of presumption and this kind of opportunism that just get the artist to do this. This is what I resent, because I think this is really kind of actually reductive, and it's good for no one. It's not good for your brand. It's not good for the artist. I mean, honestly, and these people, the mobile phones, were not even. They weren't even commissioning art. It's like just scoop off out of their portfolio stuff that we can put on the phone, as long as it has a positive vibe. And again, we won't even get into remuneration. Like, we won't even get into the part of this, because this idea of visibility as currency is also like deeply mistaken. But I think if there is an answer to your question, the idea is to be extremely clear about what the practice is, and to make sure that whatever that mural is doing is at least true to the practice. Now, you may not be able to get over the fact that it's in the fishmongery at Carrefour, but at least, it has a degree of truth to your own sense of concept, whether that be irony, whether that be, some kind of social critique or some kind of social responsibility as well. Maybe there's a project that can be done that is actually that. But think of it that Carrefour is always going to think of it in terms of entertainment, in terms of diverse, keeping its customer moving, keeping its customer buying. So how does an artist work around those things, right? So Guy Debord would tell you that you know, that's an appalling situation even to engage with, because that's precisely what's wrong with the society. But to a certain degree, we live, you know, in late capitalism, in this place, in this like deeply neoliberal place. So we need to work around these structures, but we don't have to be victimized by them. And I think part of the strategies, again, I'll stop, but these are micro strategies that I'm talking about now. They're micro strategies of what you accept and how you frame what you're doing to these people. They're very small things. They don't move like tens of thousands of people's, you know, opinions, but they do move the opinion of a board, like a boardroom or a marketing department.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I think I think I'm going to ask a question, but I think that you've already kind of gone over a lot of this territory. Is that I've done some governmental work. One of my major bodies of work is doing machine drawing using AI and robotics and things like that, in which I argue that the artist is still behind these processes, you know? And the thing is there are two things that I find. Is that I find on one hand that there is such a fascination with the technology, not necessarily getting the head around that, you know, this is process-based art, you know, and still it's just a very, 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 very elaborate apparatus. In other words, it's an incredibly, you know, complex, you know, paintbrush, you know? And then, so the thing is that, you know, what I've gotten about 2 or 3 commissions, you know, one being SICA and a couple of them being governmental, for, you know, for various things. And I think it's probably best to just keep that general. And the thing is that there are 2 things that happen. Is that on one hand, there's probably much more fascination with the apparatus than the work, which, you know, the work, you know, the work stands on its own. But I mean, on one hand, there's the fascination with innovation and technology. And of course, you know what, and I'll admit, as a brand strategy, I do sell that a little bit, you know, and you know, it works, you know, okay. But on the other hand, is that there are times in which, and I think this is where you're starting to talk about with the Carrefour bit, with the, I think actually there would be an incredibly fun art video about fish scaling, you know, but, you know, I think that would be fantastic. You could have a lot of fun with that, but in a very Miranda July sort of sense, you know. Yeah. But I think on the other hand, what happens is that in many ways, I have found that some of my clients have rather than wanted me to articulate, you know, how I interpret let's just say the design problem or the art problem, you know, for the space or the experience problem. And then saying that, and then they start coming in and basically saying that, actually, I'm not sure exactly whether we really want you to, we have this concept and we want you to do it. And I mean, that's almost a design issue, and there's nothing wrong with that, but yeah. I'm an artist and I'm a theorist. And so what happens is the fact that how do you, in this Debordian way, you know, kind of, you know, negotiate the design space versus the art space in these sorts of, you know, in these sorts of commissionary spaces, you know. And the thing is that, and I think a lot of times commissioners, you know, sometimes, you know, feel that there's a very blurry space between, you know, when you're talking about the artist as thinker, you know, there's this idea, you know, between, you know, what is the role of the artist? Is the role of the artist as a technician? Is the role as a thinker? Is the role as a designer? And I think this is a really good conversation that you're having here in regards to saying, how does the artist draw the boundaries in sort of like their brand identity, and then, you know, draw the boundaries of what their practice is, and then say, you know, really what happens is that regardless of what you want me to do, this is sort of what I do, and make it clear that if you want me to be going outside of this thing, don't say you're helping me and offer me less. I'm probably going to raise my fee because of the fact that you're pulling me outside of my practice, and it's going to take me a lot more effort to get this thing done, you know. And so the thing is that which I've done on a couple occasions, and but the thing is that how do we negotiate these spaces between, between art and, between art, thought leadership, which I think what you're talking about really, and then design, and then experience design.
Yeah. It's a really good question, and it has come up in my conversation specifically around user experience, like experience design in a retail sense. So there's a big sort of luxury distributor group that I used to work for, and that I've had conversations with, and again, like I think in the end they really opted for an agency who would be able to go in and pull solutions around, user journeys and user experiences, and do personas in a very kind of design thinking sort of way. So based on a methodology like that. Whereas again, what I'm arguing for, I guess, because this is based on the model that I'm seeing, is more sort of like micro, like smaller projects, I guess, where intervention, and I think that's where I have to start almost with this, is that there are smaller projects of intervention that would like fall between the cracks of like design thinking.
Yeah, if I can give a small provocation in that, an example of that I was able to do a number of years ago were the little MTV independent animator bumpers and that sort of thing. That I think was a really good experience, working with MTV and making the little 15-second artist shorts, and that sort of thing. I think that's actually if you get that opportunity, I think it's a really great opportunity. Because I know that they still do those from time to time.
I actually have a good example of an artist whose project I supported during my time at Sharjah Art Foundation. This was part of March project a couple of years ago. His name is Matthew Pierce. And as a ceramicist, he was interested in this idea of having access to large scale kilns, because he wanted to build these very kitschy cat homes, these like fantasy cat homes in Sharjah. He noticed that there are lots of stray cats being fed. And so we hooked him up with the largest possible kilns here, which belong to a toilet factory in Ras Al Khaimah. So rack ceramics, all of us are supplied with rack ceramics. And more than building those like fantastical homes for cats, a lot of his practice was around observing the workers over there and how they were working, and how they had this method to producing and mass producing hundreds, if not thousands, of toilet seats and sinks, and what his sort of presence in a place like that, making these cute cat homes, did as a conversation, let's say, or as an opportunity for that factory to have 2 weeks of this like bizarreness.
Yeah, but then, I mean, I guess my point would be like, so push that a step further, right? Inject that sort of artistic thinking into something. Like, I don't know at what degree he intervenes. It may not be like shoulder to shoulder with a worker, but like a level or two up, and like talk about, well, how can I help? Like, what can I do? How can my practice and your industry meet somehow to do something sort of unexpected? Yeah, so that would be like my encouragement, is to do.
Kevin, I wanted to ask you to expand on psychogeography a little bit more for those who aren't necessarily familiar with the term. How, I mean, maybe just a historical reference, but also how does it apply to thinking today?
Well, I mean,
specifically in a place like the UAE, actually.
Yeah, so so it comes from this idea of the dérive, right? So the dérive is, I mean, I think in English it's translated generally as drifting or something, but the dérive were, outings that situationists would do to kind of make sense of the surrounding area, or kind of create this sort of discourse and critique the sort of structures that are around, and also kind of warp them to a certain degree and alter their initial usage. Debord's book, the Society of the Spectacle, is a big kind of push in this direction of his whole thinking around in the same sort of spirit as the dérive. And psychogeographies is looking at the sort of for any sort of space, its impact, or its kind of what it contains and what its kind of psychological fallout could possibly be. So what do these different spaces and what do these different geographies? So he's looking at it in a much bigger mapping area, let's say, but he is looking at how what is the psychological potency, let's say, of these different geographies. And Michel de Certeau, in the same way, is looking very much at this idea of walking within space. And de Certeau looks a lot, again, the idea of the difference between a walker and a voyeur, and that the voyeur kind of looks from above and the walker actually does it from within. And he likens this idea of walking and as the same action as kind of writing a sentence. It's a generative action that you are actually moving through a space and creating it. And I think I've been thinking a lot about this in terms of like when the lockdown actually first happened and how all of our flows are really blocked, you know, like how the lockdown was really about, you know, not letting you walk and not letting you write that sentence, or not letting you actually explore potency of space or move around within it at all. So that became like this idea of flows became very very important at that point. And again, like I would want to work, I mean, again, if we were talking about retail spaces and things like that, I would really want to work with people who have a sort of spatial component to their work. What would be, you know, what is this idea of space? And how do we belong to the space? And how do we, you know, what are the layers of the space? You know, what does the space show us and give us, but what is it behind that, really? I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it definitely does. And, you know, one thing we were discussing just before we went live was this idea of the humility of dealing with different audiences, actually, like non-art world audiences or non-art world situations, and what that could mean. But also, if you could speak a little bit about maybe like the intangible benefits of an artist just being placed in very, very different contexts.
Well, listen, I mean, the intangible benefits of it, I mean, for me, it's always this educational component. It's always, how do we bring people to a greater understanding of, as Patrick was saying, what is the role of the artist, right? And I think that these ideas of the role of the artist is something that, you know, even in the art world, we have a mythologized type of approach to what the artist is and what the artist is supposed to do. And when I talk about, again, like micro strategies of self-representation, when, you know, I work with people, as I will, like with you guys, like the writing a statement or writing a text that represents one's practice is always, I see the traps that people fall into, and they're generally traps that are related to like identity politics or you know, just kind of second guessing curators, second guessing what the market wants, you know, nationalistic tropes that don't necessarily like, you know, oh, I'm gonna, you know, my work is about collective memory. Really, is it? You know, or just sort of misrepresenting, not out of the will to misrepresent, just because there are already all these traps that we're sort of conditioned to produce. And I think that this deconditioning, and this through education and this sort of making the artists first understand what they do like really clearly, but then this sort of wider public, like how can we get more people to understand what, you know, what is the role of an artist today? What does an artist do? How does art work? Like, what is it? Like, what is it? Just as simple as like painting a thing on the wall? You know, is that it? Is it, you know, is it just a watercolor in a Damak building? What role do we ascribe it today? And I think these are conversations that you need to provoke with people. They don't happen easily. You know, and I look at instances that we have here that work hard to do that. I think you know, you're now playing in a space where, okay, parents are important, maybe, you know, like shifting the needle on how relatively conservative parents might feel about their sons and daughters going into being an artist. Like that was considered, you know, hugely risky, and just it was unacceptable not so long ago. Now I think that needle is moving, right? So somehow this discourse on the artist and what she does or he does, and how, you know, how is that a viable thing? So museum studies already is kind of working, where you've got huge motors behind it with the museums in Abu Dhabi, but that those museum studies programs cropped up, it seems extremely important to me. They didn't have to. You could have sent people back to the Louvre all the time. But I think that idea of skills acquisition and capability building and professionalization, like what you guys are doing, these are all moving the needle on the education of what an artist does, can be, might be. You know, these are the intangible benefits, a higher valorization in society, or not higher, but clearer. Like, this is what I do as an artist. You are developing an artist class, or you are at least giving confidence to an artist class that is already here. And that's hugely important, especially here.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Kevin? Does anyone volunteer to
like, go on the pitch?
But I mean, yeah, I guess what I wanted to add as well was this idea of how much it can open as an opportunity to strengthen one's practice as well, you know, like whether, you know, you're into, I mean, maybe a good example actually is Asunción's work. Asuncion Molinos Gordos deals with politics and agriculture, and she had done several residencies here, but her last visit to a recycling plant in Sharjah just invited the opportunity for her garden commission at the Jameel Art Center many years later. But it was this idea of looking at the human digestive system, and because they were recycling sewage over there to convert it into fertilizer, what the human body was not digesting completely were seeds. And as a result, you had these seeds sprouting into tomato vines, onions, a pomegranate tree even. And she was looking at this idea of building a garden that kind of represented this, like this influx of different people coming in, the globalization of Dubai actually, but just how genius the human body is. But negotiating that with the sewage plant was one thing. It was a really beautiful back and forth relationship, and obviously you had the institution as, you know, the mediators, so Jameel Art Center and the production team there kind of going back and forth with this, and then having the right kind of gardening engineer on board with her, and for all these minds to come together and produce this project was absolutely brilliant. But again, you know, I was asking you earlier about your role as a mediator for this, and how do you see yourself kind of working between both areas actually, as that negotiator or as that like pivoter of the idea?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Pivoter is quite a nice word, but it's really, it is this idea of I feel like it is a collaboration, and I haven't really completely figured this out entirely yet, but I almost feel that there is a sort of triangulation between what, you know, the artist will do with the brand and how we sort of workshop everything together. And again, I would like to work on, you know, again, giving it potentially a theoretical framework or giving it potentially some kind of grounding that, again, this speaks to my own interest, right? Of working with the artist in order to create a framework that at least kind of develops that refers back to something else that you can, you know, hang something on and speak about later, sort of in terms of its yeah, conceptual grounding. So work with the artist sort of on that, and also sort of, not that everyone needs a mediator, but also sort of, yes, triangulate with the brand. Understand that, you know, brands need quick wins. So how do you frame, you know, and brands need quick wins, and they always need to show other people around them that they're winning quick. You know, they know, like, especially as Patrick will know, like working in government, those things, there's a lateral view. Like they need to see what you're doing, and you need to come up with success stories very quickly. And so this, I mean, I can frame things like this so that the kind of corporate side of the equation is happy, and that the artist side is sort of working as well, like in a you know, to their own rhythm. So yeah, I think there is a mediating role. I mean, writing briefs, running workshops. I mean, I feel like there is this sort of connective tissue between the two, but I don't also want to say that an artist couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that an artist could do that. So it almost seems like a collaboration between me and the artist and the brand, with one of us being able, both of us being able to sort of, you know, workshop those things through together. And again, it's conceived also as a residency. Like, I would want the artist to go live in Carrefour, like to go sleep there and see what happens when the fish arrive in the morning, or see, like, just do things that you wouldn't do simply if you were walking down the aisles when everyone else is walking down the aisles. And what is that? Again, that's the psychogeography of the store. Like, what does that do? So again, like beacon technology in that seems really pale, because you imagine that you know, an artist, you know, running loose in a store at night will come up with ideas, will have stimuli, will have, you know, will be pushed to something. At the same time, you know, she needs to be there when it's super like teeming with people as well. So all of these experiences I don't want to have with, I think that this is the realm of the artist. I can sort of commute them with her back to people that, you know, and maybe, yeah, and package it maybe.
Can I offer something?
Yes.
Is that actually just ended yesterday. I gave a talk on some of the work we were doing at Zayed University and at my VR lab. It was the UNESCO Futures Literacy Summit, and the one thing that I saw it has nothing to do with anything we were doing, but the thing that really just kind of blew my mind as the artist or urban planners is propositional force. In other words, the idea of saying, okay, there was this idea of trying to look at different configurations of the urban space. But the thing is that their process, and I don't want to necessarily, I want to get past the notion of the technology that was behind it, but, you know, just not be amazed by what was done, but seeing and leveraging processes as, you know, as mediators of maybe wonder. So what this guy did, he did a laser scan of these of a few neighborhoods, and there's this relatively new version of Minecraft called Minecraft Earth, which is almost like Google Earth, but it's Minecraft. And so what they did is that they took these scanned LiDAR models and they translated them into, you know, Minecraft blocks, put them onto Minecraft Earth. And then what happens is that these urban planning students started basically reworking bridges, you know, reworking, you know, like, you know, public promenades and things like that. And then going out with their phones and looking at the AR space. At first, this looks like, you know, a lot of you know, a lot of things using a lot of technology. But the thing is that what I see this, especially here in the UAE, capturing a public imagination with the discourses of innovation that are so prevalent here. So the thing is that, and the thing is that what I'm looking at here is that I'm really kind of looking at this technology and saying, I was amazed by it, but I didn't see that necessarily as the most interesting thing. I saw the strategy as the most interesting thing, you know, as to getting the imagination of the students, getting the imagination of the public council, you know, and all that sort of thing, you know, with this discourse that was happening in the public sphere and being able to leverage that to do certain other things through that channel. And so the thing is that I see this as similar to that scenario of the artist running amok in the Carrefour at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which is actually really a lovely idea, a lovely image in my mind. You know, but you know, these are the things when you're talking about this, is that this is what I think about.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think like what I retain from that as well, what you said, Patrick, is this fascination with innovation to the expense of other things, at the expense of other things, right? That it is the medium is the thing, or that sort of like, wow, we have that. So there's,
but then using that to then Trojan horse other things under it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's actually, I actually do that a lot. You know, in other words, it's like saying, oh, okay, there's it. And then the thing is, then they say, but you know what, you're doing that, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I am actually. And it's like, oh, okay. And I basically kind of see various tropes as conversation starters, you know, as conversation starters, and actually almost ways to capture the imagination for contracts almost, you know, and then at that point, you know, but the thing is that doesn't compromise my practice or my, as long as I can deal with my content the way I want to, you know, these are my processes anyway. So this doesn't compromise my practice at all, as long as I can execute my content pretty much the way I want to.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, Kevin, I like the idea of introducing this in like smaller batch projects or interventions to begin with. And, you know, it reminded me of, I mean, the reason why the examples that you gave earlier exist in places like the UK is because the person for art schemes was initiated in the 80s, right? And so the idea behind that was that every company had, or like government facility had to allocate a very specific percentage that would go, I mean, very broadly towards commissioning public art or supporting artists, but eventually it really evolved to include a breadth of things, as you said. So bringing in poets, bringing in artists who work in media and sound to be part of their companies as well on like smaller projects. So yeah, I mean, and the initiative continues to run across the board.
Yeah,
but it's also the fact that companies always had it, like it's a yearly budget that is required to be spent on this.
Yeah, but I think the success of some of these things, again, I mean, I can only speak about Unilever because I've read the case study, I've seen those films, and Miskandareya, is that it really was down into the daily lives of people. It wasn't just a sort of policy that like was vaguely referenced and things. Like these people were really having almost you know, daily, like vaguely therapeutic conversations with the poet, you know? So it was this moment for a really long time at the law firm. And the same thing with Unilever. I mean, they were constantly redoing things around contemporary art at the time. And again, an agency was their partner in it. I forget the name, but it's in this video. And they were constantly engaging people in it. And again, these are case studies, so I suppose in some way, even though they're kind of archival now, they probably were meant to promote. But you got the impression that you know, that people liked it, and that this guy who was talking about Unilever, who was like, it was good for our bottom line, because there were a lot of people who came back to like packaging with new ideas for packaging, you know, Unilever products, or like, I think, I don't know if it was L'Oreal, but there's some other like skin thing that because of this exposure to art, or because of getting their hands dirty with these collections and with these different, you know, ways of thinking, and like a kind of what I call a true creativity, brought back to their own job an increased sense of how do I, you know, innovate? How do I apply this thing? And so they ended up with far better. Again, the packaging design is the one thing that sticks out in my memory, but he's arguing from the point of view of a, you know, of a capitalist, and he's saying this was good for business in the end.
Kevin, we have a question from the audience from Rania, which is like, are artists, do you think artists are open to the idea of working with different corporations, hotels, and firms? And she also adds, the concept of the artist is limiting many creatives to open up to working on such a capacity, while in fact there might even be a way to make their practice grow. So yeah, it's also like the shaming around working in this way. And I guess you kind of answered that in the sense that if this is true to an artist's practice, then this works, right? This is a winning formula. But like, even if it does work, and it is very aligned with your practice, you know, you also run the risk of just like the overexposure, things being taken out of context slightly. I don't know, a random article writing something that then goes viral. Like maybe the things that, you know, make us quite reserved about our practices as well. Because what you're really asking is the challenge of really putting yourself out there in the wide world with, and far beyond our echo chamber, right? So I mean, how do we go about doing that?
I mean, to Rania's first question, are artists open to it? Yeah, I mean, I see artists open to it, but I also feel them sort of stumbling into things that may not actually be right for them. And I think earlier we were talking about an artist I used to work with who has like recently shown in places where she didn't necessarily have control over the work. The work was probably sort of used as an, you know, an accessory and auxiliary in a lot of ways to thinking it wasn't taken really on its own terms as an artwork, as she probably would have liked. So there's a certain relinquishing of control that happens in these relationships. And I think when artists are not open to that, it's because they may not be willing to relinquish control, and often for the right reasons, because it may, you know, result in something not particularly beneficial for their practice, or the fallout of it, like a bad article, or just being ignored, you know, like the thing was a zero sum, like there was no benefit from it had by anyone. So again, like I think it's hard, like, you know, people want to be seen, and you know, also, I think one of the things I promised in this blurb is the idea of rethinking the gallery show as the absolute outcome, right? Because I think here we tend to, like, every artist wants to be shown in a gallery. That seems to be the path, right? Like, I want to, everyone I speak to, like, you know, but I mean, how am I going to get a gallery? Which gallery should I go and talk to show my work? Like, who's the best suited for me? And you know, I always think like, okay, yeah, we can talk about that, and we can look at, again, this is a positioning exercise, like how are you positioned in relation to the other gallery, the other artists that are in this gallery, and what do you think your relationship will be like with this gallerist, knowing how they are and what they have, you know, in their stable, and the frequency with which these artists produce, and the frequency with which you produce. So these are all things to take into consideration. But I wonder if the actual work of gallery representation doesn't happen through other means. Like, Again, I'm a huge fan of this outreach that goes from peer to peer. Like I always encourage artists to kind of look at look who else is working on the things that you are working on. Like if you're working on this whole idea of like recycling or sustainability or eco-activism or things like this, like how do you then how do you find other people who are doing that and start conversations with them? How do you find curators who are looking at that and start conversations with them? And this is how I believe, again, you're going to tell me that this is networking, right? And that this is sort of the definition of what I'm calling it. It's a very sort of old thing. But I honestly think that these conversations lead to gallery outcomes, that you have to go and have to worry about, knocking on the door of a gallery and things like that, that these will find the right outcomes. They may be institutional outcomes. They may not be gallery outcomes. And it's not that I don't want, galleries to have artists or be successful or, engage with collectors, but you may find that the path is more fulfilling sides going around the galleries. So those are other things to think about as well. And once an artist said to me, like, I don't need a gallery, I just need a good website, and I need to know a writer and a curator, and they'll introduce me to more writers and curators. I was like, maybe that website is your gallery. Maybe you curate it the way a gallery would curate a show, and that if you have some people who will write about it and make it visible somehow, why not? So again, I just where the artist is, right? Do I go and show do I put my art? Do I give it to this PR agency who's then going to go give it to Ace Hardware as part of like a worst possible example, but yeah, am I going to give it to one of these people who are like even for Rolls-Royce, those are big commissions, right? So Manal and Mohammed Kazam, and these are big things where you repaint a car and things like that. Those are great, like, visibility things. Even BMW, when they used to come to Art Dubai, Shafa did a talk with them once, but I mean, you fundamentally don't get the impression, even though BMW does the art journey, you fundamentally get that they don't understand what the artist is doing. So that opportunism keeps coming back up. And this is where the artist sort of has to make a decision, like take a stand or not.
Yeah, I mean, Rania adds, like, it's really about standing your authority and remembering that, they're also asking to work with us, right? So it goes back to this idea of feeling victimized / feeling like you're the only one getting an opportunity, behind this. And actually, how do we think in the reverse, where we need to stand our ground, because that's what they're asking us to do as well. We need to interrogate and, autonomize the process rather than give it completely to somebody else.
Yeah. But this is education. Again, it's back to this. It's back to this idea of, like, the artist is not just instrumentalized to make something that my brand needs. I have to engage with the artist on an intellectual level and on a collaborative level, not just like, but these things are like, most of these three examples that I gave, there was no intention of ever meeting the artist. Send me her portfolio, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
There's never an intention of working collaboratively. And this is why they're the most putrid examples that I can come up with. But there was no intention. And in the case of the fund, there was no intention of payment. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think Damak probably would have paid you. Again, it wasn't Damak, I can't remember who it was, but I mean, they would have probably paid for the paintings. But again, like, what is that? What is that?
Yeah. Well, Kevin, we want to say thank you so much.
No, thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, and excited to jump onto the private session with you as well. But really, for anybody looking for advice, strategic thinking around who they are and their practices, Kevin is brilliant at that. And tomorrow we have one more public session, and this is with Munira Sayegh, and this is around exploring curatorial practices within the UAE. So working independently as a curator and as well as with institutions. So please join us then. And Kevin, we will catch you in a few days too.
Wednesday, yeah. Okay.
Fantastic.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to both of you. Right. Bye.